Join me as I dive deep into my past and explore whether my childhood trauma really shapes my kinkiest desires. Let's talk about sex. Sexual kinks in particular are something that most people have, but few are willing to discuss openly in our modern society. Despite the sexual revolution and increasing acceptance of diverse orientations, there remains a thick veil of silence around specific desires and preferences. Society has a way of labeling desires as either normal or deviant, creating artificial boundaries between what's acceptable and what's taboo. But the truth is, human sexuality is a lot more complex and nuanced than these simple categorizations suggest. Some kinks are just fun and harmless preferences that add spice and excitement to consensual encounters, while others have deeper psychological roots, sometimes tied to trauma or suppressed emotions, that deserve careful consideration and understanding. But here's where things get particularly tricky. When we don't talk about these things openly and honestly, when we let shame and judgment dictate what's acceptable in the bedroom, we can actually make things significantly worse for individuals and society as a whole. People either bury their desires deep within themselves, which can lead to serious emotional distress and psychological complications, or they explore them in unhealthy, unexamined ways that could potentially harm themselves or others. Today we're breaking down the complex psychology behind why people develop and maintain kinks, how societal judgment and shame can actually make sexual exploration more dangerous than it needs to be, and why understanding the critical difference between fantasy and reality is so fundamentally important for healthy sexual expression. What are sexual kinks? A sexual kink is anything that falls outside the so-called vanilla norm of traditional sexual behavior and desire. Things like role-playing various scenarios, power dynamics between partners, sensory play involving different textures and sensations, or anything that spices things up in a way that's specific and meaningful to the individual. Some people are drawn to dominance and submission dynamics that explore power exchange. Others find fulfillment in impact play or voyeurism that pushes their boundaries in consensual ways. There's a massive spectrum of possibilities when it comes to kinks, and what turns one person on might completely confuse or unsettle someone else. And that's perfectly okay and normal. The key takeaway here is crucial. Kinks aren't inherently bad or harmful in themselves, but the way we engage with them, process them psychologically, and understand their role in our lives does matter significantly for our mental and emotional well-being. The power of judgment and why it can be dangerous. Society loves to police desire, often in ways that are counterproductive and potentially harmful. Certain kinks have somehow made their way into accepted mainstream culture, while others are met with immediate disgust or suspicion, often without any rational basis for the distinction. What this arbitrary moral policing does is push people into unnecessary secrecy, making them feel deeply ashamed for things that in many cases are completely harmless when explored consensually between adults. And here's the real problem that needs to be addressed. When people feel they have to hide or repress a fundamental part of themselves, they don't get the chance to process it in a healthy way with appropriate support and guidance. Suppression of natural desires can lead to compulsive behavior, unhealthy secrecy, and in extreme cases, people acting out in ways that do become genuinely harmful to themselves or others. Open conversations and safe exploration in appropriate contexts allow people to examine their desires with self-awareness and responsibility, without shame clouding the process and leading to potentially destructive outcomes. When kinks are tied to trauma, this is where things get deeper and more psychologically complex. Some kinks, especially those that involve power imbalances, control, or fear, may actually stem from past trauma that needs to be acknowledged and understood. There have been numerous studies and case reports suggesting that individuals who have experienced certain types of abuse or emotional neglect may develop kinks that replay elements of those experiences, but in a setting where they have control over the narrative and outcome. This doesn't mean that people consciously want to relive their trauma. Quite the opposite. In many cases, the fantasy is actually a sophisticated psychological mechanism for reclaiming power over something that was once completely out of their control. A person who felt powerless in childhood might develop a dominance kink as a way of asserting agency. Someone who experienced coercion might find unexpected comfort in exploring consensual submission, where they get to set clear boundaries and give explicit permission for everything that happens. But it's also critically important to recognize when a kink might be masking an unprocessed wound that needs professional attention and care. If a person only feels safe in dynamics that mirror past harm, if they can't experience intimacy without recreating traumatic scenarios, it could be a significant sign that there's deeper healing work to be done. Kinks can be a healthy way of processing emotions, but they shouldn't be a substitute for actual healing. While kinks can provide temporary relief or a sense of control over past experiences, they shouldn't become a crutch that prevents someone from seeking professional help when needed. The goal is to integrate these desires into a balanced, self-awareness approach to sexuality, rather than using them as band-aids over deeper emotional wounds that require proper therapeutic attention and care. Fantasy versus reality. Why they aren't the same thing. One of the biggest misconceptions about sexual fantasies is that they represent what a person actually wants in real life. That's not always the case. The human mind is remarkably complex, capable of harboring thoughts and desires that may seem contradictory or even disturbing when viewed through a conventional lens. A person might have non-consent fantasies but have zero desire to ever experience that in real life. Understanding that the fantasy provides a safe space to explore power dynamics without any actual harm. Others might enjoy the idea of submission in the bedroom, but be fully independent and in control in their day-to-day life, finding liberation in temporarily surrendering control in a trusted consensual environment. The brain is weird like that. It compartmentalizes. This compartmentalization serves an important psychological function, allowing us to explore different aspects of our personality and desires without compromising our core values or daily functioning. Understanding the difference between a thought and a real desire is crucial. Not every fantasy needs to be acted on. Some things are meant to stay in the imagination, and that's okay. In fact, keeping certain fantasies in the realm of imagination can be healthier than attempting to actualize them. The problem comes when people don't examine their own thoughts and just follow impulses without questioning where they're coming from. This lack of self-reflection can lead to impulsive decisions that might harm themselves or others. It's essential to develop a mindful approach to our desires, understanding their origins, implications, and potential impact on our well-being and relationships. The role of shame and suppression in avoidance. Sometimes what we call a kink might actually be a distraction from something deeper. A person might dive into extreme sexual experiences as a way to avoid confronting their true sexual orientation, using intense physical sensations to drown out questions about identity that feel too threatening to face directly. Someone with unresolved trauma might use intense sexual encounters to numb emotions they don't want to face, creating a cycle of temporary relief followed by deeper emotional disconnection. Again, kinks themselves aren't the problem. It's why we engage with them that matters. The motivation behind our sexual choices can reveal important insights about our emotional state and psychological needs. Are they an extension of our pleasure and self-expression, arising from a place of genuine desire and self-awareness? Or are they an escape hatch from something we don't want to confront, serving as a sophisticated avoidance mechanism that prevents real healing and growth? That's the real question that deserves careful consideration and honest self-reflection. Why we need open conversations. If we want a healthier relationship with sexuality, we need to be able to talk about it without shame. Creating safe spaces for open dialogue about sexual desires and experiences is crucial for both individual and collective well-being. Judging people for their desires doesn't make them go away. It just pushes them into secrecy, often leading to isolation and potentially dangerous situations where people explore their sexuality without proper support or guidance. When we don't examine our own desires, we lose the chance to truly understand ourselves and make informed choices about our sexual expression. By creating a space for honest conversations, we can break down myths, reduce harm, and give people the tools to explore their sexuality in a way that is safe, consensual, and self-awareness. This includes understanding consent, establishing boundaries, recognizing red flags, and knowing when to seek professional help. So if this is something you've been curious about or struggling with, just know you're not alone and you're not broken. Sexual desires and fantasies are a normal part of human experience, and questioning them is a sign of emotional intelligence rather than weakness. The more we understand ourselves, the better choices we can make, and that's true in every aspect of life, including our sexual expression and relationships. How did this video make you feel? Was it uncomfortable? Feel free to keep the conversation going in the comments, and we'll see you next time. Remember, the goal isn't to judge or shame, but to understand and support each other in developing healthy, fulfilling relationships with our sexuality.